fight for the electoral vote so far. Donald Trump has 19 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 3 electoral votes, 270 electoral votes needed to win. And now we have a key race alert. In the state of Georgia, Donald Trump is in the lead with 51% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 48.5% of the vote. Donald Trump with a 4,556 vote lead. That's with only an estimated 3% of the vote in. The polls just closed at 7. In the state of Florida, Donald Trump in the lead, his new home state, 53.2% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 45.9% of the vote. Donald Trump with a healthy 438,912 vote lead. That's with half of the vote in, 50% of the estimated vote. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, Donald Trump in the lead there with 58.5% of the vote. Kamala Harris with 40.5% of the vote. Donald Trump with a 2,871 vote lead. Still a lot of votes to come in from the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're coming up on another critical round of poll closings in the presidential race at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. That's just minutes from now. 37 of the 270 electoral votes needed to win the White House are at stake. When voting ends in North Carolina and Ohio and West Virginia. North Carolina is one of the 7 crucial presidential battlegrounds tonight, as its changing demographics have made it more competitive for Democrats than in some past elections. Kamala Harris is in a heated battle right now with Donald Trump in North Carolina after he won that state in both of his previous presidential campaigns, narrowly last time. Abby Phillip has some new information from Harris campaign headquarters at Howard University. Abby, tell us more.
Yeah, Jake, I mean, as you noted, Donald Trump won North Carolina the last time around, but by the slimmest margin of the states that he did win. So the Harris campaign, they are looking at that state as very much in play. What I've heard from the campaign tonight is that they are seeing in some rural counties lower than expected votes. Those counties are expected to go for Donald Trump, so they see that as a positive sign. And then on the other hand, when they look at where their voters might be, it's in places like the Raleigh-Durham area where you're going to have a larger proportion of those voters educated, a lot of people moving into the state, into those communities. You're going to have more diversity in those communities. And I'm told that the Durham turnout today gave them some optimism and hope as they go into this poll closing deadline in just a couple of minutes. So the campaign has been talking about all these battleground states having a plausible path to victory. They see North Carolina still very much in play, Jake.
All right, Abby, thanks so much. Let's go to Caitlin Collins now in West Palm Beach, Florida, at the Trump headquarters. Caitlin, what is the Trump campaign looking at right now?
Well, Jake, obviously when it comes to North Carolina, something that they're hoping will be a gut check for them tonight. One thing that they're looking at, remember, this is a state that they thought Donald Trump was well on his way to winning when President Biden was still in the race. Of course, once he dropped out, it seemed like it was more in play. One thing that I'm told aides are keeping an eye on tonight is whether or not the governor's race has an effect on what the ultimate numbers there look like in the presidential race. Obviously, the Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson, who is the Republican gubernatorial candidate, has faced scandal after CNN reported on his past comments. That is something they will be watching closely tonight, as Josh Stein, the Democrat, is expected to do well. We'll see what the ultimate race looks like there. And Jake, I should note, as they are keeping a close eye on these early gut checks, hopefully they believe in Georgia and North Carolina, Donald Trump is also still making calls to get voters out in Pennsylvania tonight. I was told that he was just on the phone calling into radio stations inside Pennsylvania, urging people to get out and make sure they get to the polls and vote. And Jake.com says some of his top surrogates are also posting online, urging people to get out and vote. Stephen Miller himself urging men to get out and vote, Jake.
All right, Caitlin Collins in West Palm Beach with the Trump headquarters. David Chalian has some exit polls coming in from North Carolina now. David, what issues seem to be driving voters in the Tar Heel state?
Yeah, Jake, let me just explain to you that first we're going to look at how people feel about way things are going in the U.S., in North Carolina, what North Carolina voters are saying. 6% enthusiastic, 21% satisfied. The plurality, 43% of North Carolina voters tell us they are dissatisfied with the way things are going in the U.S., 27% angry. I just want to say those bottom two, 7 in 10 voters that are dissatisfied or angry, obviously, if you're the Trump campaign, you think there's a lot of opportunity there for you. But the Harris campaign sees opportunity there too. They want to get at least a chunk of those dissatisfied and angry voters who are dissatisfied and angry with Trump's dominance in our politics. So that'll be something to watch later in the evening. We also are looking here at the most important issue. Economy actually ranks top, not like it is nationally, but like we saw in Georgia, though a tick down from that. 36% say the economy is the most important issue in North Carolina. Democracy is right up there, Jake, at 32%. Well down then is abortion and immigration in the teens. We also asked about hurricane aid here. Is federal hurricane aid getting to the people who need it? You see it's roughly split here, but 49% say yes, federal hurricane aid getting to where it needs to go. 46% say no. And then Joe Biden's approval rating, it's 1 point higher here in North Carolina than it is in Georgia or nationally. 42% approve, 56% disapprove. Again, the Harris campaign would like to make sure they get some of those Biden disapprovers into their fold, but that kind of approval on Biden is what is giving the Trump campaign hope in a place like North Carolina. Jake?
Interesting. All right, David Chalian, thanks so much. And let's talk about this. And Dana, I mean, again, some headwinds for Kamala Harris here in these exit polls. First of all, 70% of North Carolinians of Tar Heels are either dissatisfied or angry with the state of things. The economy is the number one issue. That's terrain that where Trump traditionally polls better. And then a bad job approval rating for Joe Biden, her boss.
Yeah, it is true about the 70 or 71% of people who are dissatisfied and angry. But I think, unlike what Chris said before, saying that means that it's a very good sign for Donald Trump. I think that what you are maybe not calculating, and what David and David with Anderson are not calculating, is that there are a lot of women and men who are dissatisfied with the fact that women don't have the ability to control their reproductive rights in America.
No, look, it's baked in. I mean, the right track, wrong track, we've known for some period of time, and the fact is the race, despite the fact that people are very unhappy for whatever reason with the way the country is going, is still supposedly as tight as can be. So Kamala Harris is clearly going to be able to overcome that. Incidentally, may I just, in the last segment, I said, I don't know why the independents are so heavily for Trump in Georgia. Fortunately, we have a very smart Republican pollster listening, and who wrote to me and said, it's the same problem that democracies, incumbents and democracies around the country are facing right now, around the world rather. Inflation, they don't like the way things are going. They want somebody to fix it. And that's Donald Trump's basic pitch at the end, which is it's broken, I'm going to fix it.
I don't want to drop the ball on what Dana said, though, about what people mean when they are dissatisfied. It's the same thing about what they mean by democracy or being independent. It's not entirely clear until we're closer to the final tallies.
No, absolutely. But the battleground states are Aaron Burnett's beats tonight. Aaron?
They are, and of course, we're just moments away from polls closing in a lot of these states in these final crucial minutes, really, in North Carolina, crucial minutes. Brianna, where you are in Charlotte, the people still have to vote, and we're starting to see some of these exit polls, concerns about the economy, the dissatisfaction that people have. What have voters been telling you?
They've been telling us, Aaron, that everything matters. We're here in Mecklenburg County, which is going to be closely watched. It voted 66% for Joe Biden in 2020, and this is going to be very important to see the result here, to see how Harris performs compared to how Joe Biden did in 2020. I'm joined now by a voter, Brian Flores. You just voted.
I did.
And who did you vote for?
For Harris.
And tell me about how you came to this decision.
So I wasn't going to vote at all until my girlfriend was blowing up my phone telling me to go vote. And if I didn't, she was going to break up with me. So now I'm here.
Was she seriously going to break up with you?
No, I made that up. She didn't say that, but it's funny to say that. So
she asked you to vote for Harris.
She did.
And so you voted for Biden in 2020, but what were you going to do this time?
I wasn't going to vote at all.
You were just going to stay home?
I was going to stay home, eat some chips or something, I don't know.
And so you came just before polls closed, but here's the thing, how long did most people have been saying it's taken them 5 or 10 minutes. Tell us how long it took you to vote.
So I got off of work at 4:30, drove here about 30 minutes. I think I walked in like at 5:05-ish, and I was waiting for about 2 hours. I just walked out.
Brian, 2 hours to fix your address, right?
2 hours.
Brian Flores, thank you so much. Aaron, back to you.
Well, that's devotion. That's devotion. 2 hours to fix the address and to stay there and devote.
Indeed.
I mean, all right, John, but those are the stories the Harris campaign wants.
You know what?
More stories like that.
That's a vote today that was not going to be there yesterday or the day before.
That is right.
Which in a competitive race, it starts with one, and that's how you build, right? So what do we have so far as we look at the map? Let's come out to the big picture first and show you. Sorry, I was just peeking in there. It's early. That's the big headline here. Look at a lot of that gray as we go from east to west. We have a lot to count still tonight. But we have some interesting things happening. Let's start in battleground Georgia, the one battleground state where we do have some results right now, and you have a very narrow lead for Donald Trump, or that's, I guess, better than that. Lead for Donald Trump, 54,000 votes now. I say narrow and it grows. That's what happens on live television. You see that right there. But this is very, very early in the race. We have 7% estimated reporting. So you're looking at the map. You see the red filling in the small rural counties. That is the bedrock of the Donald Trump movement. He wins big in rural America. The challenge for Harris is to run it up here. We have nothing from Fulton County. You saw Victor Blackwell earlier tonight in Gwinnett County. Very early on. You have a little more 1,000, 1,100 votes there if you add that up. So we have a long way to go. Just for comparison purposes, Joe Biden gets 58. So can the vice president keep it there at 59 as we move through the night? Again, that's an incredible early rationale there. But that's what you're looking at, right? Are you at least matching the coalition of the last guy to win the state? And that would be Joe Biden 4 years ago. And if you're not, if you're losing in some areas, can you make it up somewhere else? So that's where we look at Georgia right now. All it tells us we have a very competitive race. Virginia used to be a battleground state. It's reliably blue now, but it will give us some pretty important clues tonight. It will, because if you look through right here, only 2% of the vote in. Again, you see, 45,000 to 43,000. This is a state that's going to be around 4 million votes, maybe even higher than that by the end of the night. So this is very, very early on. It's 2% of the vote. But you look at the map and you say, are there any surprises here? This would be a surprise. Prince William County in the suburbs, you see, D.C. is right here. Very blue suburbs here. Fairfax County, go back 20 years, Republican leaning. Now you come out here to Prince William County. Again, it's only 5% of the vote. Trump up by 6 points there. Just go back and take a peek. This was blue, and it was decidedly blue. So it's very early. That vote total could be one precinct, could be one Republican area. It's just a thing we keep an eye on. You mark it early on. Right now, that's where Biden did very well. At the moment, Trump, if Trump can improve in the suburbs and the exurbs, that's his path back to the White House. It's early on, but that's the thing you look at as this plays in. What else are we looking for here? This is Chesterfield County. Richmond, Virginia is the capital. Suburbs beneath it to the south, suburbs around it to the north. Only 6% of the vote in. Harris getting 51%. Again, your test is match it up to Biden. He had 52. She wants to stay where his number is. You say, oh, it's a point or so. A point or so can matter. Maybe not in Virginia. She may still win the state. But if she's underperforming Biden in the suburbs, that would be a warning sign. This is way too early. Way too early to say that's the case. I pointed out just that these are the markers we're going to go through as we go through the night, as we look it out. When it comes to Virginia, here's my test here. Again, this is 2%. Those numbers, forget about them. We're going to get a long way to go there. Here's the number you want to look at. This was a 10-point race. 10-point race 4 years ago, right? It was not a 10-point race in 2016, right? It was still blue in both races. That's Obama. Sorry, I went all the way back to Obama there. Let's come to 2016. Run the clock. There we go. Oh, that's not going to work for me. There we go. It was a 6-point race there. That matters. That matters. Virginia might still stay blue. The question is Donald Trump tighter in the blue states? Because that means he'll be better in the battleground states. And, Jake, that's what you watch. Counties come in, you take a look, you try to learn some lessons.
All right, and we're coming up on another critical round of poll closings in the Harris-Trump presidential race just moments from now. That's when voting ends in the battleground state of North Carolina, as well as in Ohio and West Virginia. A total of 37 electoral votes are up for grabs right now. And CNN can make a projection that Donald Trump will win the state of West Virginia. West Virginia and its 4 electoral votes going to Donald Trump. Too early to call. Too early to make a projection in battleground North Carolina with its 16 electoral votes, or in Ohio with its 17 electoral votes. Let's take a look at the electoral map at this hour now that we've called a state for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has 23 electoral votes in the lead of Kamala Harris, who has 3 electoral votes. 270 electoral votes are needed to win the race. Both are far from that. Let's bring you a key race alert now in the battleground state of Georgia. Donald Trump in the lead with 58.1% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 41.4% of the vote. Donald Trump, 69,586 votes ahead. That's with only an estimated 8% of the vote in the state of Georgia. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, Donald Trump in the lead there with 49.6% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 48.8% of the vote. Donald Trump with a 948 vote lead. Only 2% of the vote has come in from the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have two more states to show you now. Florida, Donald Trump in the lead there with 53.5% of the vote. Kamala Harris with 45.5% of the vote. Donald Trump with a 586,779 vote lead. That's with most of the vote in, a majority of the vote, 64% of the vote in the state of Florida with its 30 electoral votes. In New Hampshire, Kamala Harris in the lead there with 58.7% of the vote. Donald Trump has 40.8% of the vote. Kamala Harris has a 5,513 vote lead. That's with only an estimated 4% of the vote. John King at the Magic Wall. What are you looking at?
Just wandering through the counties, Jake, where votes come in, especially in the battleground states. This is Georgia right now. As you noted, 69,000, almost a 70,000 vote lead for Donald Trump. But, and it's a very important but, 8% reporting. 8% reporting. A long way to go in the count in Georgia. In fact, you just take a look, 240,000. Donald Trump in the lead right now. Joe Biden had 2.47 million when he won the state 4 years ago. So we have a long way to go in the count in battleground Georgia. But you're just looking for clues and hints to see, is this going to be, every race is different, right? You always compare Trump to Trump 24, to Trump 20, to Trump 16. Can Harris match Biden? Will black turnout rival Obama? These are the questions you have coming into the election, and then you actually get results, and it'll be the Harris coalition versus this year's Trump coalition. And we watch it play out. So one thing you look at, you see Cobb County is red. Well, if that's the case at midnight and 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., that would be a big deal. Let's not overinvest, 277 to 186. So you've got fewer than 500 votes. As you can see, we have a long way to go in Cobb County. So sometimes you get an early precinct or early batch of votes, and it draws your eye. If that stays that way, that would be a big deal. But if you go back to 2020 and look, this is the key to Democratic victory in Georgia, right here, Atlanta and the suburbs. So you come off that and come back to 2024 and see where we are. Not much of it in yet, right? So let's just take a peek around it and look. Fayette County, you're more to the south there. 60% for Harris, about 37% of the vote in. So they're getting some votes in there pretty quick. A ways to go, but let's just match it up. Harris gets 60%. Let's see how President Biden did there when he had a narrow victory, right? President Biden lost that county at 46%. So that would be, if it stays that way, a net plus for Harris. You're trying to flip counties. Anytime you flip counties, you're helping your math. So let's come back to 2024. Again, let's watch and see if that holds. Let's come back in and come over here, and you come down here to Rockdale County. Again, here's Atlanta, right? So you're moving out, suburbs into exurban areas. Here you're out here, 76%. They're counting fast there. They say they're at 74%. Sometimes that changes a little bit, but that's what their estimated reporting is. She's at 76%. If you round up, you come back, Joe Biden was at 70%. So if you look at those counties, and you're in the Harris headquarters, that's what you're matching up. Are we meeting our targets, or are we exceeding the Biden coalition? Still some votes to be counted there, but that's an encouraging number for the vice president when you compare it to 2020. So let's come back out and take another look. And you come up here, Victor Blackwell is here, keeping an eye on Gwinnett for us. It is a larger, more populous suburb to the northeast of Atlanta. Again, 15, 20 years ago, it was Republican. Mitt Romney carried this in 2012. The vice president at 57 right now. It's almost more important to look at his numbers sometimes. Can Donald Trump improve his standing in the suburbs? He doesn't have to win. He just has to improve his standing in the suburbs. If you can make that a 46, that makes you more competitive. So 43 right now in Gwinnett County 2024. But look at again, 812 votes. Harris is in the lead. By the time we're done, you're going to be in the 200,000s, right? So we have a very, very, very long way to go. Trump at 40% there 4 years ago. Trump running 43% right now. But again, you got to look at the early count. We don't even have a percentage there because it's such a small number of votes. But that's what you're doing early on. You're just looking, placing some markers to try to do the comparison as you go back and forth. And Jake, I just want to pull out quickly to the map and look at it here. Everything else is filling in as expected. The question is to look at some lessons. In North Carolina, we do have some first votes in, and it is blue at the moment, an 1,820 vote lead. There you go. It just moved again. More votes came in, 8,732 vote lead for the vice president. But again, 17,782 votes. It might change even as I speak. This is just to show you how early we are in the count. It takes 2.7 or more to win North Carolina in a high turnout election. So we're very early in the count, but North Carolina and Georgia, critical battlegrounds. If Donald Trump wins North Carolina and Georgia, the vice president cannot win this race if she loses Pennsylvania. If he takes those two off the board, North Carolina and Georgia, she must win Pennsylvania. So as these counts come in these battleground states, we're starting to get into the point where we can start doing some electoral college chess. North Carolina and Georgia are critical. If Harris loses them, her path becomes incredibly narrow. If she can win one of them, she has more options.
All right, now to Boris Sanchez, who is our first projection of the night in the fight for control of the U.S. Senate. Boris.
Jake, a major projection to bring you. In their quest to take control of the U.S. Senate, Republicans have their first expected pickup, and it comes from West Virginia. A former two-term governor, Jim Justice, the Republican in this race, is projected to defeat the mayor of Wheeling, West Virginia, Glenn Elliott. Justice, a former Democrat, now expected to take control of the seat held by retiring Democrat-turned-independent Senator Joe Manchin as he now retires. Kind of gives you an idea of where West Virginia is headed politically, so this is no surprise, but it is significant for the math. Justice, a MAGA acolyte known for taking his 4-year-old English bulldog everywhere with him, it appears that Baby Dog and Justice are now headed to the U.S. Senate. So what does this mean for the magic number? Republicans started out the night needing control of 2 Democratic seats to take the upper chamber. Now that number is down to 1, and they are currently leading in one race where Democrats hold a seat. Let's get you some key race alerts now and show you exactly where that is on the map. We start with Ohio, still very early there, but Colombian-born businessman Bernie Moreno is leading Democratic incumbent Senator Sherrod Brown, seeking his 4th term, only by about 16,000 votes. Still very early, though, 3% of the vote in the state of Ohio. If you're a Democrat and you're looking at the map, you're looking for opportunities to pick up a Republican seat. One of their best opportunities in the Sunshine State of Florida. Rick Scott got elected by winning only about a 10,000 vote margin over his previous opponent back in 2018. Right now, he's 715,000 votes ahead of former Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Murkisell-Powell. Still a lot of votes to count, but this is with 60% of the vote in the state of Florida. So stepping back, looking at the raw numbers, what does this mean for the balance of power in the U.S. Senate? Democrats hold 28 seats, Republicans 40, with that one important pickup in West Virginia. 32 seats remain up for grabs, Jake. You need 51 for control of the chamber.
All right, Boris, thanks so much. Let me bring you a CNN key race alert right now. In North Carolina, Kamala Harris is in the lead with 68% of the vote. Donald Trump has 30.8% of the vote. Kamala Harris, as of this hour, has a 41,599 vote lead. That's with only an estimated 2% of the vote in from the big battleground of North Carolina with its 16 electoral votes. In battleground Georgia, Donald Trump in the lead with 60.6% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 38.9% of the vote. Donald Trump, as of this hour, with a 109,841 vote lead. That's with an estimated 9% of the vote in from that key battleground state of Georgia and its 16 electoral votes. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, Kamala Harris has 59.7% of the vote. Donald Trump, 38.8% of the vote. Kamala Harris with a 105,065 vote lead. That's with an estimated 11% of the vote in from the Commonwealth of Virginia with its 13 electoral votes. We expect more votes to come in from key battlegrounds at any time, and we're going to soon get the first results from a third high-stakes presidential battleground, the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Voting ends in the Commonwealth just a few minutes from now. We're going to talk to you on the other side of the break. Stay with us. It's 7:43 p.m. on the East Coast, and we're heading into one of the busiest hours of this election night. Here's where the race to 270 electoral votes stands right now. Donald Trump has 23 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 3 electoral votes, both of them far from the 270 needed to win. But we have some new results to share. So here's a key race alert. In battleground Georgia, Donald Trump in the lead with 62.7% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 36.8% of the vote. Donald Trump with a healthy 166,655 vote lead. That's with 13% of the estimated vote in. Still a lot of votes to be counted in Georgia. In battleground North Carolina, Kamala Harris has 67.5% of the vote. Donald Trump has 31.4% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 40,929 votes ahead of Donald Trump, but it's still very early. 2% of the estimated vote is in. Still a lot of votes to count in North Carolina. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, Kamala Harris has 58.2% of the vote. Donald Trump has 40.3% of the vote. Kamala Harris with a 121,029 vote lead. It's still very early, only 15% of the estimated vote in from the Commonwealth of Virginia. In Florida, Donald Trump in the lead, 54.3% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 44.7%. Donald Trump with a healthy 822,987 vote lead. That's with an estimated 71% of the estimated vote in from Florida. In Ohio, Donald Trump with 56.7% of the vote. Kamala Harris with 42.5% of the vote. Donald Trump has a 31,716 vote lead. It's still very early in Ohio, only 4% of the estimated vote in. In New Hampshire, Kamala Harris in the lead, 58.7% of the vote. Donald Trump has 40.8% of the vote. Kamala Harris has a 10,020 vote lead. Still very early in New Hampshire, only 7% of the estimated vote in the Granite State. We're only minutes away from the biggest wave of poll closings in this entire presidential race. We are counting down to the top of the hour. That's 8 p.m. Eastern, when a total of 171 electoral votes are on the line. That's a huge chunk of the 270 needed to win. Voting is about to end in Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, the District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oklahoma, the key Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Tennessee. All eyes are on the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in this hour ahead. It is one of the make or break battlegrounds up for grabs tonight, and the polling there has been 48-48 or 50-50. Kamala Harris is hoping to pull off a win in Pennsylvania, as President Biden did 4 years ago. Donald Trump aiming for a repeat of his 2016 victory there. Let's check back with our campaign correspondents. First to Abby Phillip, anchoring at Harris headquarters in Howard University here in D.C. Abby, what is the latest from Harris campaign headquarters when it comes to watching the returns come in from Georgia and North Carolina?
Jake, right now, my colleague Jeff Zeleny has some new reporting about what's happening in the state of Pennsylvania. Jeff, what are you learning?
Well, Abby, there's no doubt that the Harris campaign is watching Pennsylvania closer than any other state. They are looking to Philadelphia in particular, what they believe is higher turnout than the 2020 levels for Joe Biden. They're looking at a couple key precincts in Philadelphia. But if that were to be the case, if the vice president is to have a strong performance in Pennsylvania, she must do well in Philadelphia. Abby, as you well know, she closed out her campaign last night in Philadelphia with that big rally on the Rocky Steps. That's where the marathon ends. It's called the finish line. The big question for her campaign, if she reaches the finish line in the presidential race, can she have big enough margins in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh to carry the state? The Harris campaign is a little worried about North Carolina and Georgia. They've always said the most straightforward path is the blue wall, but all eyes are on Philadelphia right now. That's why, as we speak, they're trying to get the rest of the voters out to the polls.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes left. Jeff, thank you for that. Back to you, Jake.
Thanks, Abby. And let's go to Caitlin Collins at Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach. Caitlin?
Yeah, thanks, Jake. We're here at the Convention Center where Donald Trump is hosting his election night party. I'm with CNN's Kristen Holmes. And Philadelphia and Pennsylvania overall obviously has been a key focus for them. But after Donald Trump and the Puerto Rican remarks dark fallout from his rally at Madison Square Garden. They were particularly worried because there are Puerto Rican strongholds in Pennsylvania.
There's more than 400,000 Puerto Rican voters in Pennsylvania, and he actually went to Allentown. There wasn't huge protests, but they were very concerned. Now, a lot of their concern focuses around some internal drama, which was that essentially after that comedian took the stage and made that joke, there was a lot of finger pointing as to who was to blame, who brought him on stage, who did not vet him. Now, internally, I am told that they have been circulating polls about Puerto Rican voters, even showing them to the former president, who was asked at multiple times, did this hurt my campaign? Is this going to hurt me with Puerto Rican
so he's
voters?
Worried about it.
He was worried about it. He was worried. He was watching the news, as he often does, and seeing the reports that Puerto Ricans were saying that they were offended by it, that they weren't going to vote for him. And of course, this is particularly important in Pennsylvania, given the fact that there are so many Puerto Rican voters. And one thing, Caitlin, it's not just Pennsylvania. Across all of these swing states, there are large swaths of Puerto Rican voters. So whether it's self-preservation because these people want to show that they didn't impact the Puerto Rican vote, or it's because they actually think it could impact him in the long term, they're watching those numbers very carefully.
Yeah, and when the margins matter, something like that certainly can. Kristen Holmes, thank you for that. Jake, obviously something the Trump campaign is watching very closely from down here in South Florida behind the scenes.
All right, Caitlin, thanks so much. Let's go to David Chalian now, who has some new exit polling. David, what are you learning about voters in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, democracy is the #1 issue for voters. Take a look. 33% of Pennsylvania voters say democracy is the most important issue. The economy's right up there, Jake, with 30%. Then abortion at 15%, immigration at 12%. Speaking of abortion, we asked, do you think it should be mostly legal or illegal? 64% of Pennsylvania voters, nearly 2/3, say it should be legal. 30% say illegal. We also asked for a view on fracking in Pennsylvania. We want to understand why Kamala Harris changed her position on this. 55% favor fracking, according to the exit polls in Pennsylvania. 36% oppose it. And Biden's handling of his job, a tick higher than we saw nationally. 43% of Pennsylvania voters in this election tell us they approve of Biden's job performance. 56% disapprove, Jake.
All right, David Chalian, thanks so much. And Chris, at least just based on this exit poll, a slightly better terrain in Pennsylvania for Kamala Harris, with democracy as the #1 issue, 33% as opposed to economy at 30%, a strong majority supporting legal abortion. And Joe Biden's approval rating is bad, but not as bad.
I think it's night and day. I mean, as compared to Georgia and North Carolina, 48% of people in Pennsylvania said either abortion or democracy was the most important issue. Seems like a very different climate than North Carolina and Georgia. And that's the point. She doesn't have to win all of the states that Joe Biden won. She just needs to win enough to get to 270, and the blue wall and the blue dot in Nebraska is enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Pennsylvania, these numbers would, if you would ostensibly be pretty good for Kamala Harris if democracy is the top issue, but the economy is right underneath that.
Yeah.
That, as we know, has been a big headwind for Kamala Harris. What we don't know yet, and what I'm really interested to see, is what Caitlin and Kristen were just reporting on, and that is whether or not that very large, not only Latino population, but the Puerto Rican population in places like Allentown and Reading, whether or not those are going to flip or maybe come out in a more robust way after Madison Square Garden.
Because one of the thing about those comments is that it draws attention to the campaign and not the way they want. Kamala Harris tried to take advantage of that. She had Fat Joe, she had Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez campaigning in Puerto Rican areas of Pennsylvania. It's not just about the mistake, it's about being able to draw attention to it and then use that as an opportunity to wake up maybe low propensity voters.
Yeah, Pennsylvania with the third biggest Puerto Rican population in the mainland, behind only Florida and New York. Back to Aaron Burnett following the action in the battleground states.
Right, and of course, chief among them right now, you're talking about it, Pennsylvania. So let's go to Kate Baldwin in Bensalem, where you have been throughout the day, Kate. And now, we're seeing these exit polls. Polls are going to close. This could truly become, as so many thought it would, the must-win state for Kamala Harris.
Absolutely. And since we last spoke to you, Aaron, we have moved to Philadelphia. This is the warehouse where all of the counting is happening. This is where the action is. And we've just learned from a source close to the counting process inside that Philadelphia will be posting, when it posts its first votes at 8:01 p.m., they will be posting just over 110,000 ballots. These are mail ballots. This is the long-awaited first batch of mail ballots to be posted, and it represents, I'm told by this source, more than 50% of all mail ballots that they have received. This also, for context, puts Philadelphia well ahead of the pace, their counting pace from 2020, which we've all become so familiar with. But this is a big moment that we're learning first here on CNN. They'll be posting just over 110,000 ballots, and we'll see the results of that when it posts online.
It's so crucial, Kate, as you say, faster than we had seen last time, and the context that Kate just gave around that number, that would be more than 50% of the mail-in ballots from Philadelphia. It's a start, but it's a better start than we've seen before. Pamela Brown is at the voting desk. And Pamela, with the spotlight on Pennsylvania right now, what are you looking for in the context of those numbers that Kate just shared with us?
So you have the early votes that are about to be reported shortly after 8 o'clock, and then you have the overall turnout. And sources I'm speaking with there in Pennsylvania and on the ground in Philly say that turnout in Philadelphia and some other places across the Commonwealth have exceeded expectations. So let's talk about that Democratic stronghold of Philadelphia and what I'm being told there. An official there tells me at Temple University, the line was around the block today. I'm told they had to bring in extra machines to tabulate the votes, 6 total compared to the 2 that is typical per this official. The Philly official also tells me while they don't have an exact number for voter turnout today, they just don't have that data right now, that turnout has certainly exceeded expectations. 2 sources at the state and local level in Philly tell me ballots had to be replenished today in several polling places there in this Democratic stronghold. Overall, one state source speaking to election officials in Philly said it seems the turnout there was, quote, quite high and seems through the roof. Let's look at the swing county here of Northampton. The state official also tells me at Lehigh University their lines were up to 4 hours long. I'm told this is not because of any glitches in the system or issues, just that the turnout there was stronger than they had anticipated at this university where there are a lot more younger voters. Now, I'm told right now as it stands across the Commonwealth, there are 600,000 fewer mail-in ballots compared to 2020, but officials aren't done counting the total number. And they tell me it's actually more mail-in ballots than they were expecting. So we're about to get our first big look at those mail-in ballot numbers right there in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania at 8 p.m. A lot coming our way this hour, Aaron.
That's right, absolutely. As Kate said, more than 100,000 of them, could be more than 50% of the outstanding for Philadelphia. John King, amazing though when you hear about 4 hours of lines, and we have heard that from Pennsylvania to Nevada, that young people have turned out.
Hopefully everyone's turning out. I just want to say quickly, seeing Kate Baldwin in that spot in Philadelphia, you want to trigger some Johnny 2020 PTSD.
Say, that's real PTSD.
Yeah, that is the spot. I remember that spot oh too well from 2020. Let's look through what we have. Blank in Commonwealth, Pennsylvania right now. Again, this is the biggest of the battleground prizes, 19 electoral votes. Whoever wins this state has more options to get to 270 because it's 19. The next biggest one is 16. But so what are we looking for here, right? Kate was just right here in Philadelphia. It's the biggest basket of votes. If you're the Democrat, you need to run it up in Philadelphia. So she just said we'll get about 100,000 votes, right? So let's just go back in 2020 just as a reminder. Joe Biden wins Philadelphia with 81% of the vote and just over 600,000 in the count. So those first 100,000 will give us a clue, but it's a building block. We're going to have to wait to see what keeps coming after that, especially if those are early ballots. And we'll see, are the early ballots this year as disproportionately Democratic as they were in 2020? That's one of the things we'll see. But this is the building block for any Democratic victory in Pennsylvania. It has to be not only a high percentage, but you want a high turnout. You want to do some raw math there to run up your margin. Then we get into the suburbs around Philadelphia, the collar counties, Bucks and Montgomery and Delaware, and then you start moving out to the excerpt to see how it's going. Pam just noted 2 places that I'll keep an eye on tonight. Again, I said this at the beginning of the program. Maybe you weren't with us. There are 25 counties in America, only 25 counties in America that voted twice for Barack Obama, then for Donald Trump, and then switched back to Joe Biden, right? So those are your bellwether counties. 2 of them are in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. One is in its northwest corner. Little Boston came out there. There's Erie. Look how close it was in 2020. But the winner goes on to win the White House, right? And then you come over here. Pam just mentioned Northampton County, which is right along the Jersey border right here. Been there a few times in this campaign, part of our All Over the Map project, a great group of voters there. And again, look how close it was in Northampton County. She mentioned long voting lines there. I talked to one of our voters earlier today by text who said she was confident that Harris could pull it out, but that's a bellwether there. That's Pennsylvania. Now let's come back to 2024 and see what we have on the map. At the moment, we told you this early on, The vice president is leading in battleground Ohio. Not much of a battleground anymore. This is a reliably red state. So just take this. It's 20% estimated reporting. You'd rather be ahead than behind. But remember, we told you, some states you're going to see a lot of early votes first, and then you get election day voting. So always good to be ahead, but it's only 20%. And the expectation by the end of the night is Ohio turns back to red, but we want to look at the votes. To be fair to the former president, earlier tonight, I talked about Hamilton County, Indiana, a suburban county just north of Indianapolis, where the vice president was leading when we were in the 50%. We're above 62% now. Still very competitive. Still could be a sign that she's competitive in Republican-leaning suburbs, but Donald Trump has taken the lead in Hamilton County, Indiana, which, of course, is a red state already in his electoral math column. Let's just check in on the Commonwealth of Virginia, and then we'll move south. Again, if you're Harris, Joe Biden had a 10-point win here, right? If you want to recreate the 2020 map, you want the states to come out roughly like they did then, only at 22%. But right now, she's in the ballpark for a 10-point win. We'll keep an eye on that. If you get that 10-point win there, the question is, can you carry it over? This has always been Democrats' frustration. How do we get Virginia, but we can't get North Carolina? Demographically, they're very similar. You could even say there are some more advantages for Democrats in the research triangle. Younger voters, more black voters. Right now, the vice president has the lead, but again, we are very early on in the state of North Carolina, 59%. Just want to go back and look for comparison. 126,000 votes, she has the lead. Why do we know we're going to be at this a while? It's going to take about 2.7, 2.8 million to win the state. So we have a long way to go here. Let's just take one more look at battleground Georgia before we get to the top of the hour, and we're going to start to see votes coming in. It's time to do some serious math at the top of the hour. Donald Trump leading at the moment, 182,000 votes ahead, but only about a third of the vote counted, and not much in yet from the Atlanta suburban area. But Jake, in the hour ahead, a lot of votes.
Indeed. Voting is about to end in 16 states and the District of Columbia, the biggest round of poll closings all night. A whopping 171 electoral votes at stake, including 19 in Pennsylvania, the battleground that could decide the presidential election. And let's bring you some CNN projections. CNN projects that Donald Trump will win the state of Florida with its 30 electoral votes, as expected. Donald Trump, CNN projects, will win the state of Tennessee, as expected, with its 11 electoral votes. Missouri will go to Donald Trump. Missouri, as expected, will give Donald Trump 10 electoral votes. Here are two more projections for Trump. Alabama, CNN can project, will go to Donald Trump with its 9 electoral votes. And Oklahoma, CNN projects, will go to Donald Trump with its 7 electoral votes. We have some projections for Kamala Harris as well. CNN projects that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, with its 11 electoral votes, as expected, will go to Kamala Harris. CNN can project that Maryland, as expected, with its 10 electoral votes, will go to Kamala Harris. And CNN can project that the District of Columbia, with its 3 electoral votes, can go to Kamala Harris. Here are the states that where the polls just closed, where we are not prepared to make a projection. They include Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, Mississippi, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. No projection in any of those states. Here is the electoral vote count at this hour. Donald Trump has 90 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 27 electoral votes. 270 are needed to win. Neither of them has approached that number yet. Key race alert for you now in the big battlegrounds. North Carolina, Kamala Harris is in the lead there with 51.8% of the vote. Donald Trump has 47.2% of the vote. Kamala Harris with an 11,000 plus vote lead. That's with only 5% of the estimated vote counted. Still a lot of votes to count in North Carolina. In battleground Georgia, Donald Trump in the lead with 54.8% of the vote. Kamala Harris has 44.6% of the vote. That's with a third of the vote in Georgia. That's 33% of the estimated vote. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, Kamala Harris in the lead with 54.2% of the vote. Donald Trump has 43.9% of the vote. Kamala Harris with a healthy 115,000 plus vote lead. That's with a quarter of the vote counted in the Commonwealth of Virginia, 25%. In New Hampshire, Kamala Harris has 55.7% of the vote. Donald Trump has 43.7% of the vote. Kamala Harris with a 9,517 vote lead. That's with only a tenth, 10% of the estimated vote counted in the state of New Hampshire. In Ohio, Kamala Harris in the lead there, 54.5% of the vote. Donald Trump has 44.7% of the vote. Kamala Harris has a 144,000 plus vote lead in Ohio. That's with a quarter, 25% of the estimated vote in the state of Ohio. John King?
Jake, we said this early in the program. We're going to say it again because caution is the operative word here. Sometimes the map early in the night, and we are still early in the night, even though we're moving on a little bit, Sometimes the map looks a little different. Sometimes it looks a lot different than it might look at the end of the night or the end of the count. In the states, it takes a day or two. I say that because at the moment you see Texas is blue. Texas is most unlikely. Rule out nothing, but Texas is most unlikely to be blue at the end of our count. At the moment, the vice president's leading 61% to 38%, but it's just 5% of the Texas vote, and as you can see, it's all from the Dallas area right there. So we have a long way to go in Texas. Also, a Senate race there we'll be keeping an eye on, but that one's not going to happen right there. We have our first votes. Look at that in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Again, only 3% of the vote in, but you'd rather be ahead from the beginning to the end if you can be. 73% if you round up for Vice President Harris, 27% for Donald Trump. But again, where are they from? They're all from right out here in Allegheny County, which is the Democratic stronghold. Just for the sake of comparison, they say that's about 25% of the estimated vote, so it could change, and it could change dramatically. But she's getting 73% if you round up, and if you come back here, Joe Biden got 59%. So if Harris can keep that number, that would bode extraordinarily well. Look at the president 4 years ago was at 59, and she is at 72.5. But most likely what you get here early on are early votes, which tend to be more Democratic. So let's just wait and see if she can hold. But you'd rather start ahead of your margin and then battle from there. That's the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Let's wander back through the map. North Carolina, a critical battleground. If Harris can win North Carolina, Trump's math gets a lot more complicated. If Harris loses North Carolina and Georgia, her math gets a lot more complicated. Here's where we are right now, 12,000 votes ahead, only 6% of the vote in. Again, she's got 179,000 and change. Just for the context, Donald Trump got 2.7 million plus to win this state in 2020. So a long way to go in the count. But you look at the map and you say, is it filling in the way each candidate would want it to fill in? So let's start here. Actually, Mecklenburg is the largest population center, and Vice President getting 70% if you round that up. This is where she needs to win and win big. The African-American community, the suburbs around it. If you're going to compete in North Carolina, you start in Mecklenburg County, in Charlotte, so 70% if you round up, 67% for President Biden 4 years ago, former Vice President Joe Biden when he ran. This gets a little confusing. But if you're Harris and you can keep that advantage, that's what you want, right? You want to run ahead of where he was. The question is, it's early in the night, can she hold that? That would bode well for her. If she can, it would show African-American turnout and that she's doing well in the suburbs. Then you move, if you're the Democrat, over to Wake County, which is Raleigh, the second largest population center in the state. Again, we're only at 7%. So this is just a glimpse, and then we check back. 72% for her, or if you want to look at Trump's number, equally important, where is he performing vis-a-vis last time? 27% for him. You come back here, 62%. So again, in the early returns in North Carolina, the Vice President of the United States in the key areas, the Democratic building blocks, is running ahead of her boss 4 years ago. It doesn't mean it will hold up. Let's just scoot over to Durham and take a look. Biden got 80% there, and you come back to Harris now, she's getting 84%. Again, it's only 5% reporting. Early votes tend to be disproportionately Democratic, so let's watch and see how it plays out. Early in the campaign, you're just checking your list. Are we above or below where we want to be? And if you're above, you take a breath and you wait for more votes to come in. I want to look out in this part of the state because this is the part of the state that was hit hardest by Hurricane Helene. There have been questions, could people vote? The state has done a remarkable job getting the facilities open and making people to vote. Buncombe County is where Asheville is right here. Again, only 7% in, 77% if you round up for the vice president. If you go back again in these early results, emphasis on early results, she's overperforming Joe Biden, who just narrowly lost North Carolina 4 years ago. So if that holds up, it tells you keep an eye on North Carolina. At the moment, she's doing what she needs to do, but I just want to be cautious that it's early votes, which tend to favor the Democrats. So let's wait until we get more. Only at 7% in North Carolina, but we keep counting from there. So then Georgia is hanging on the board blue, the Sun Belt battlegrounds. We'll get to Arizona and Nevada later in the night. Some of the count there may take us into tomorrow and beyond, but the other two Sun Belt battlegrounds are North Carolina, where we just were. Let's gas up the car. We go to Georgia now. The former president of the United States ahead there with 56% of the vote. You're up to 36%, so you start to think, okay, we're doing some business here with the count. However, I just want to caution, Fulton County, by far the largest county population-wise in the state. It's 10% of the state. 159 counties in Georgia. This is by far number one. About half of the vote in, 71%. This is where you start to get, in North Carolina, I just said very early on, the vice president was running ahead of the president. Well, you see 53% there at 71%. Here, she's running a little bit behind the president. Again, there's more votes to be counted. But remember this as we go through the night. 73% if you round up for Biden 2020 in Fulton County. The absolute bedrock of any Democratic victory has to come with big math there. 380,000 votes and change for for the president then. You come here now, she's at 71%. That's a little below. It's a little below the Biden number. We'll see where the final turnout number rounds up. But if you're in the Harris campaign, you're working the phone saying, yo, what's out there? What's going to come? Where are we going? Do we really think we matched our numbers? And if you lose a little bit in Fulton County, you better make it up in the suburbs around it, which is why this is very interesting, but it's also very early. Cobb County, 58%, but look at that, 986 votes for Trump in the lead. It's going to take 200,000 plus, 220, 230,000 to win Cobb County. So let's be careful and cautious early on about that. Then you just come back out. This one's Gwinnett up here, Gwinnett County, Harris at 52. But again, look, we're very early here. We love counting votes. It gives me an early test of how things are playing out. The 52%, if you round that up, go back to 2020, Biden at 59. You're not alarmed yet because you're only at 2%. Just want to drop down here to DeKalb County. This is the most Democratic of the suburbs, just to the east of Atlanta. Biden gets 83. We don't have any votes in there for the vice president there. One thing the Harris campaign has been saying is if you look out here, you're moving more out to the exurbs now. You're moving more out to the exurbs. Still a high African-American population out here. That Harris, with 77% in Rockdale County, getting 76%, if you round that up, running well ahead of President Biden out here. So there are some areas where you have a higher vote count, Jake, in Georgia, where the Harris campaign says we're running a little ahead of Joe Biden. In some of those other places, we still need more votes before we can make a fair comparison.
All right, John King, thanks so much. And we have a key race alert for you now. We're getting some votes in from two key battlegrounds. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris in the lead with 77.6% of the vote. Donald Trump has 21.5% of the vote. Harris with a 187,924 vote lead. But it is very, very early. It's only 5% of the estimated vote has been counted in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania with its big fat packet of 19 electoral votes. In battleground Michigan, Kamala Harris in the lead with 76.7% of the vote. Donald Trump with 22.1% of the vote. Kamala Harris with a 62,597 vote lead. Again, very, very early. Only 2% of the estimated vote in the battleground Michigan with its big packet of 15 electoral votes. John King?
Jake, I was just in your home state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's been at the gym. It's a slimmed down packet of 19 electoral votes. It's not so fat. It's slimmed down. It's looking good. Here we go. Where are those votes coming from? Well, number one, they're mostly coming from Philadelphia. Kate Baldwin told you just a few minutes ago we were going to get them. Here it is. She said we would get 100,000 votes. We got a little over 100,000 votes, right? 17%, though, of Philadelphia, 87% in the first batch of votes in Philadelphia for the vice president. Again, bit of a broken record, but you compare her, Joe Biden won Pennsylvania, so you want to go back and look 4 years ago, and how is she doing vis-a-vis Joe Biden? 87% in Philadelphia. He got 81% in Philadelphia. It's early in the count. We know these are early votes. Kate told us that. Early ballots tend to be disproportionately Democratic, so will this number hold up for the vice president? We'll see as we play out. If she stays close to that number, comes down a little bit, she'll be in good stead in Pennsylvania, but we need to get more votes. Where are the rest of the votes? You're going to come out here now to Lancaster County. This will be interesting. If this one stays blue, you got 52% for the vice president if you round up. But look, it's fewer than 1,000 votes there, fewer than 800 votes. You come back 4 years ago, Donald Trump won this county convincingly, Lancaster County, 57% if you round that up. So we got a ways to go as we wait that play out. So you see things early on. Again, early votes. You get some early votes. They tend to favor the Democrats, which is why, for example, as we leave Pennsylvania, and the votes that you still see Ohio on the map is blue. Well, unlikely to hold up. We'll see. Everything's fair game on election night. You count the votes and you see what happens. But we're very, very early on in the count in Ohio. And for example, a few moments ago, we showed you Texas as blue. That has changed, just barely. Donald Trump just barely ahead, but that has changed as well as more votes come in some of these rural counties in Texas. So let's come back to the states in play, and let's start in battleground Georgia. It was 11,000 votes, 700 and change back 4 years ago. Donald Trump at 57% right now. Why is that? You see the red? See all that red? Those are the building blocks of the Trump coalition. I talked about the Democratic coalition. Urban areas, close in suburbs. Then you fight in the exurbs and farther out in the suburbs. Trump's base is all these small rural counties. I'll just pick one randomly, Wilcox County. 57% reporting, he's getting 77% of the vote. You say, well, that's only 1,500 votes. That's not a big deal. It's a big deal if you're getting it here and here and here and here. There are a lot of counties, right? You've got 159 counties in Georgia. 159 counties in Georgia. The Democrats win 13. They carry the state, right? They're all in Atlanta and the other urban areas. So that's how Donald Trump runs it up in these little tiny counties. And so you go back, let's pick another one. Jackson County, 78%. It's slightly bigger. You see the math there. 90% counted, so they're almost there. 78% in 2024, 78% in 2020. Donald Trump's base is Donald Trump's base. Let's just pick another one just to compare it out. Hall County, again, slightly bigger. You see, 49,000 votes. That matters. That matters. You're getting a margin like that. That's 30,000 votes out of one county in a state that is very competitive. 73% 2024. Let's just come back and look. 71%. So in that county, Donald Trump's overperforming 2020 Donald Trump, which is good news for the Trump campaign. Now you got to add them all up in the end. And again, the key for the Democrats is here. I just want to check back on Fulton County. Still at 53% there, 71% for the vice president. This one, still no math. Cobb County, if that one stays red, Donald Trump's going to carry the state. But it's still very early in the count there. You come down to Douglas County. A moment ago, I was talking about Rockdale County. This is one of the counties the Harris campaign is tracking and saying, okay, this is good news for us. Why do they say that? She's about 76% of the vote count in. She's at 66% when you round that up. And Joe Biden was at 62% 4 years ago. So again, it's relatively populous, suburban area, southwest, exurban area, southwest of Atlanta. And you're looking at the Biden number, and then you look at the Harris number in those counties, and you say, we're doing a little better than Joe Biden did 4 years ago. And that's good for the vice president, especially if she's going to lose a little bit in other places. If she's not matching Biden in places, you want to overperform Biden in some others. So, Jake, you look at the map, it's getting interesting, but we still have a long way to go. I just make one quick peek at North Carolina, still at 9%. We'll keep counting.
All right, John, let's go to Boris Sanchez now for new projections in the fight for control of the U.S. Senate. Boris?
Yeah, Jake, a handful of projections to bring you right now. All of them holds for the incumbent party. Let's start with the Sunshine State of Florida. There, incumbent Senator Rick Scott, the Republican, will defeat Democratic Congresswoman, former Congresswoman Debbie Merkersell-Powell. Scott winning a second term in the Sunshine State. Meantime, in Tennessee, the first all-female Senate race in the volunteer state's history, incumbent Republican Marsha Blackburn will win her second term, defeating Gloria Johnson, a state lawmaker. Meantime, in Indiana, Congressman Jim Banks, he will defeat Democrat Valerie McRae, a clinical psychologist. This is for the open seat left by retiring Senator Mike Braun, who's now running for governor. Let's show you some Democratic holds beginning in the Northeast with the state of Massachusetts. There you have incumbent Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren seeking her third term in office. The former presidential candidate is expected to defeat John Deaton, a best-selling author and cryptocurrency advocate. Staying in the Northeast, another projection to bring you for Democrats in the state of Connecticut. There, incumbent Democratic Senator Chris Murphy will win his third full term in office as he defeats Matthew Corey, a bar owner / teamster who's run for statewide office now 5 times. The 5th time, not the charm for him. Murphy wins re-election in Connecticut. Meantime, a projection to bring you from Rhode Island. There, incumbent Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse seeking his 4th term in office. He's projected to defeat Patricia Morgan, a Democratic member, or rather a Republican member of the state House. And now, in Vermont, the longest serving independent in congressional history, Senator Bernie Sanders, an independent who caucuses with Democrats, is expected to win his 4th term as he defeats Gerald Malloy, a business executive. So what do all those projections mean for the magic number, the number that Republicans need to pick up in order to take control of the upper chamber? With the 1 pickup in West Virginia, they started out the night at 2, now it's at 1, and they are currently leading, still early, but they are currently leading in 0 races where Democrats hold seats. Let's take a look at some key race alerts now and get you live updates, live results as they are coming into CNN, beginning with the state of Texas. This is a welcome sign for Democrats. It is still early, but right now, Democratic Congressman Colin Allred from the Dallas area has about a 31,000 vote lead over Republican incumbent Ted Cruz, who's seeking his 3rd term in office. Of course, Democrats love to see this, but it is still early, and this could present one of the few opportunities for Democrats to pick up a Republican seat. We just got an update now. His lead up to 14,000 votes with 18% of the vote in the Lone Star State. Let's get you an update from Pennsylvania. Here, incumbent Democratic Senator Bob Casey, seeking his 4th term in office. He's currently leading against the CEO of one of the largest hedge funds in the world, former CEO, I should say, Dave McCormick. Casey right now with a 223,000 vote lead. Still very early, though, 6% of the vote in. And it just updated a 222,000 vote lead now for Casey with 6% of the vote in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. An update for you. One of the closest races we are expecting tonight coming from Michigan. There, Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, 60,000 votes ahead of former Republican Congressman Mike Rogers. This is for the open seat left by retiring Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow, 3% of the vote in the Wolverine state of Michigan. So, looking at the balance of power for the U.S. Senate, these are the raw numbers. Democrats hold 32 seats, Republicans 42, with that one important pickup in West Virginia, but 26 seats remain up for grabs. It's an open contest right now in the U.S. Senate. You need 51 seats to control that chamber, Jake.
All right, Boris, thanks so much. We're awaiting more votes in the crucial presidential battlegrounds of Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. We're watching those very early votes from Michigan as well. We're also looking ahead to 9 p.m. Eastern, when all voting is going to end in Michigan and another blue wall battleground state, Wisconsin. Voting also ends soon in the key western swing state of Arizona. More votes, more suspense when election night in America continues after this quick break.